Are you one of the hundreds of people who use the D word or the B word in order to stop a conflict? If you're like most of us, you'll go to great lengths in order to avoid a conflict. Do you ever wonder why? Welcome to Passion Unlimited Podcast. I am your host, psychotherapist, author, and founder of Fearless Love, Gianni Adamo. If your go-to word is divorce or telling your other half that it's better that they would be without you than with you, then you're like most of us and you have not been taught how to handle conflict effectively. So without conflict resolution skills, we're left with immature reactions and gestures that can cause great harm to your relationship and a lot of pain and suffering for yourself and your partner. Yet, when we handle conflict in a respectful, positive way, conflict becomes the opportunity to strengthen the bond between two people. In today's episode, I will be discussing conflict resolution skills. Whatever the cause of disagreements and disputes, by learning these skills, you can keep your personal and your professional relationships solid and healthy, because that's what we all want, don't we? So, as you guys know, I love working with couples, and before or at the beginning of all of my new clients, I start with an intake assessment. And in that assessment, I will ask, usually like the second or third question I will probably ask them is, I want you to rank yourself and rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being poor, 10 being very good or, like great at something. I want you to rate yourself on conflict resolution and making up. That's one of my first questions. And I want you to consider that question for yourself as well. So what does that question mean? What that means is every relationship, no matter what it is about, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a business relationship or an acquaintance, just a friendship, we're going to have conflict. We're going to run into each other's toes. We're going to step on each other's toes. So how you handle that says a lot about your character and your maturity level. So when we are able to handle conflict and come back to the other person, talk about how you were hurt, how you were disappointed, maybe what your expectations were and how they were not met. And then you find a way to make up with that person. Then your conflict resolution skills are probably around, and of course that's being reciprocated on the other side, so you're able to preserve this relationship. Then you're probably at 1. Most people are not at 1. Most people are somewhere between the 1 and the 10. And today we're going to hopefully grow and expand in tools and tips to help you to be a much better, more effective, not only communicator, but someone who can resolve the conflicts that life sends us. All right, so let's get into conflict 101. A conflict is more than just a disagreement. It is a situation in which one or both parties perceived a threat. And that threat could be real or it could be imagined. So it could just be something that you're feeling or sensing, but it may not be the facts. So when a conflict triggers strong feelings, because usually that's what happens, there's usually underneath those strong feelings a very deep personal need that is often at the core of the problem. And these needs can range anywhere from you feeling unsafe or not secure or insecure to maybe you feeling not respected or devalued. Maybe you are being triggered because, especially with your partner, and we're trying to help you to reboot. This is a season of rebooting your relationship here on Passion Unlimited Podcast. So maybe you were being triggered because there's a need for greater closeness and intimacy. So recently I was in session with a newer client, and I asked her a series of questions, and she basically answered the question indicating that she really liked being a respectful person. She likes being kind. She likes to associate with respectful and kind people. There were other things that were in that dialogue, and I started to get a picture and sensing what was underneath, because I was also sensing a bit of like an OCD, obsessive compulsive personality type, where things have to fit in a certain box in a certain way. This individual happens to be a survivor of sexual abuse. And when we were done with that dialogue and that conversation, I proposed to her that perhaps the reasons why that she needed to have everything so in a perfect square, let's say, everything equal and everything has to match, is because she was in need for safety and security. And she was like blown away, because she realized that she never understood why she operated the way she did, and so exact, and so maybe with so much extreme integrity. And it was because this has come through years of being sexually abused when she was a child. And now, in order to feel safe in this world, she has had to create very strong boundaries about her relationships, which have come into a conflict with her and her husband and their intimacy and their sex life. Because unfortunately, with so much demand for safety and security, it has snuffed out the passion in her marriage. So we're uncovering all this. So anyways, my talk today is on conflict resolution and making up, but I wanted to present that because some of you may understand through this dialogue that you're also in that same space with your partner, that you have a great demand for safety and security because of maybe some past traumas. And now this demand is being placed on your spouse. And unfortunately, when we have such a great demand for safety and security, it can then snuff out this passion, and we don't have the balance. So if there's this balancing act that we do need by taking risks and keeping things a little light and not always having everything so tight. So anyway, so continuing with our conflict resolution discussion, conflicts continue to fester when ignored. Okay, so here, because conflicts involve perceived threats of your well-being and your survival, they stay with us until we face this and resolve this conflict. So I've had another client, there's a couple that's in therapy together, and the husband every so often will hide the phone from his wife. And then of course she gets very critical and suspicious when he does that. So as we are in this dialogue, and of course she goes a little crazy and a little mad and a little, out of craziness, and she reacts and he hates it. So as we unpack that in session, he basically hides his phones when there are texts that have come through his side of the family that are critical about his wife. And he, in order to make sure that she doesn't see these critical texts, he hides the phone, or he doesn't just leave it out or let her just look at it. So in session, we discussed this behavior, and what he discovered is that behavior of hiding the phone and not being open and transparent is actually what's causing her to go crazy and be upset and start yelling and screaming. She would rather have him be transparent and provide the phone, or just leave the phone alone. And if she happens to use his phone and sees the text, then she can question him about it. But she would rather be completely transparent and not have him hide it in order to avoid her from feeling hurt and then having this conflict. Okay, so it's always more important that you do face the conflict and try to ignore it. All right, another thing to know about conflicts is that we respond to conflicts based on our perception. of a situation, not necessarily on the objective facts. Our perceptions are influenced by our life experiences, by our culture, by our values and beliefs. So let's just say a woman who has been cheated on, right, will react very differently, or a person who's been cheated on will act very differently than a person who has never been cheated on when the spouse decides to hide the phone. And boy, I get to see that in my practice all the time. So the women who've been married to the narcissist, or the married or the people who are still married to the narcissist, when somebody hides the phone, they flip a switch because they're like, what are you hiding? Who are you texting now? They go through all these people's social media accounts. They go through the telephone bills. They don't leave any stone unturned. Why? Because they have been cheated on. And now their perception and their reality is colored by distrust, because unfortunately they have entrusted themselves to people who have betrayed them and their trust. But yet the woman or the person who really hasn't experienced betrayal will just get annoyed and be like, why are you doing that? That's kind of like immature. I should be able to access your phone, especially if you're committed to one another. There should be complete transparency. There should not be secrets between the two of you. So that person is just like, you're being immature, versus like flipping the switch and seeing red. And now you're head on with head-to-head, confrontation. So anyway, so every one of us, based on our life experiences and our cultures and values, will perceive and react to certain different things that would cause conflict for us. Okay, so if you had not noticed, conflicts create really strong emotions, and this is why most of us go to great lengths to try to avoid them, because we feel that we don't have a lot of control in helping other people to understand how our perspective and what we're feeling. Usually we're criticized, we're put down, what we're saying, our opinions may be devalued, and nobody wants to be stuck there. So first, I want to invite you to be comfortable with your emotions. Really, truly be comfortable with all of your emotions, the whole range, from the sadness to the depressed moods, to the disappointments, the discouragements, to anger, irritability, rage. There's a whole range of emotions. There's sadness and fear and a gazillion emotions out there. I want you to feel comfortable with all of your emotions, because see, if you're comfortable with all of your emotions, then you will allow other people to be comfortable with you. It is really hard when you're uncomfortable with your anger, because I remember for me, being angry was like unacceptable, and I hated being angry. And then of course I would attract people in my life who did not care for me being angry either. And that is like the self-fulfilling prophecy. So the fastest way to like start calming all of this is you becoming comfortable with all of your range of emotions. Be okay with yourself, not entitled to be angry and then hurt people with your anger, but just understand that it's okay to be angry. And sometimes we are enraged, and we got to recognize, okay, now I am feeling rage. And then obviously we want to take steps to take care of ourselves, to calm down, and then to be able to mindfully sit down with someone and have a conflict resolution discussion. But you need to be okay first with your feelings, and then you want to label them. All right, so the other thing I want to tell you about conflicts is that conflicts are an opportunity for growth. And in reality, this is why conflict exists. This is why we don't live in this happy-go-lucky world. Because as human beings, we're on a journey of growth. We're on a journey to grow and love. We're learning how to love ourselves. We're learning how to love others. We're learning to just mature. So in that journey, what helps us move forward are conflicts. It's like weightlifting. To build muscles, we put resistance, and then we can create some muscles. So consider conflict your friend. All right, so that's a shift of mindset. Consider that you're creating maturity, depth, and character. So I want you to start thinking of that. In addition, when we're able to resolve the conflict, it builds trust. You can feel secure in knowing that your relationship can survive challenges and disagreements, and you can start moving into deeper or just closer to your partner, to your spouse, to your girlfriend, to your boyfriend. Okay, so I have some good news and some bad news. I'm going to tell you the good news first. Well, maybe I'll tell you the bad news first. Okay, so the bad news. The bad news is that all marriages have conflict, and some of them cannot be resolved. So the good news is that all marriages have unresolvable problems. So basically, it's the same thing. It's the same issue on both sides of the coin. Good marriages and bad marriages. And everyone has unresolvable problems. So the good news here is that your marriage doesn't have to dissolve, and you don't have to end your relationship. You can still thrive in your marriage if you have certain conflicts that still years later are not resolved. A successful marriage here is about choosing a particular set of problems with a person that you fell in love with, that you recognize that you will be accepting and wrestling with for years to come. And you basically are choosing to cope with these sets of issues. So every relationship has sets of problems that we've inherited, whether they're coming in from the family of origin or they're just with your partner. And of course, like I said before, conflict really helps us to mature. So a lot of the conflict that enters your marriage is not really something that's going to stay there forever. It's about the two of you growing together and evolving and maturing. Okay, so some common topics that couples fight about that I have seen in my practice is feeling used and being taken for granted. So I want you guys who are listening to this podcast and or watching me on YouTube to maybe take a little piece of paper and start writing down, like, what are the themes around my fights with my partner? For many people, it's feeling used and being taken for granted. And also feeling neglected. In fact, the majority of the divorces are filed by women. This is historically accurate. It's always been that way, and it probably will continue to be that way. And the reason why women file for divorce after years of marriage and after years of complaining and crying and yelling and screaming is because they have felt neglected. They have felt abandoned, especially emotionally. They have felt being used and not being valued. These are huge reasons why the women fight. So when the women are fighting, guys, I don't want you to say, oh my God, here she is again complaining one more time. I want you to say, here's the gift. She's trying to share her heart, and maybe she's immature about how she's expressing that at this moment because she's just she's just reacting to all these emotions. But the truth is, it's a gift because she's trying to tell you that there's something wrong, there's something causing her pain, and she needs your attention. Many times also, people fight over the lack of quality time. We live in such a busy world. Everybody's distracted. They're on social media, they're texting, they're working from home, and there's no time to nurture and care for your relationship. So many times we fight around the lack of quality time and a lack of communication. Other times we are in conflict because we're trying to negotiate personal pursuits. Personal pursuits, so those are things that your dreams are made out of, and you want to follow through on these things. And sometimes you're afraid to put your best foot forward because you're afraid it's going to cause a conflict with your partner, or now you have to hand over more responsibility to your partner and you're afraid to do that because you don't want to tax them. So then you're annoyed and disappointed and frustrated, or just like the porcupine that anytime anybody gets close to you, you're like prickly. So those are not good ways of handling conflicts. You want to be honest and real with yourself first. Also feeling like you're not being cared for or cared about are also big reasons that people fight about. Not being respected, being in transition. If you're having a baby or just had a baby, lost your job through this coronavirus pandemic, if you are moving to a different house, all of these, or you're going back to college, all these things represent a life transition, and we have to change. We have to adjust, and the brain hates it, by the way. Our brain likes routines. It likes to predict things. That's how it feels safe and secure in this world. So every time we have a change by choice or it got imposed on us, our brain kind of starts to like complain. So please be aware that if you are in transition, if you are right now still in this pandemic, trying to transition your business, trying to find a job, all this is tiring and exhausting, and you're going to need time for you to nurture and self-care. Because if not, the conflicts will rise in your home front. And also another reason that we have a lot of fights at home and conflicts is the loss of a sense of control. So when someone is making decisions for you and not inviting you into the decision-making process, we are seeing red. Oh my goodness, we see red. All right, so I'm gonna give you 5 steps to conflict resolution. There's a lot of different schools of thought, and there's many different things that we can try to do for conflict resolution. But it's my podcast. I figure I am going to give you like 5 basic tips, 5 steps that you can take that will help you and your partner to resolve conflict immediately. So the first step is start with your intentions or affirmation of your partner. And also ask your partner to listen to you until you're complete with all of your thoughts. So don't go back and forth. Just have one person speak at a time so that whoever has the floor, whoever has the issue can really self-express. Say everything that they need to say about the issue or about the situation that is creating stress for you. Okay? Then I want you to use I statements, because you need to be a safe person. You can't be just coming out and punching your partner verbally. You have to use I statements. You keep it on yourself. You focus on your feelings. You focus on your needs. You focus on your wants. So basically, instead of saying to your partner, you're not listening, see that? You're now trying to manage and control another person. You can invite them to listen and say, babe, I would like for you to listen to me. Would you mind if we can just have a seat or go for a walk so we can talk about something that's heavy on my heart? So now you're inviting them versus attacking. All right. Another thing you can say in reference to these using the I statements is, instead of saying you are careless with money, because once again, you're pointing out somebody's problems and issues, you're trying to control them. Instead, you can say, what I want is, I would like for us to create a budget, and I want us to start saving. I want us to create, a retirement account. I want us to create an account for travel. I want us to create an account for me to go back to school, whatever it is, or for the children, for their college fund, whatever the situation. You're inviting your partner from a place of peace, not fighting or criticism, but from a place of peace where you've already understood yourself first. And now you're saying, I would like this. I would like to start a budget and start saving. Another thing you would want to avoid is to, instead of saying, you don't care about me, because once again, you're pointing fingers. I want you to say, I feel neglected. I don't feel like you have given me any attention this week. But what I would like is for us to sit down every day and maybe speak for 15, 20 minutes. We can sit in the porch, we can sit outside, drink some lemonade, drink a cup of coffee, have a glass of wine, and I want us just to connect. I feel like our works have pulled us, this pandemic and everything that we've had to change in our lives has pulled us into 20 directions, and I don't want to feel neglected or lonely anymore. I would like for us to sit down and just enjoy each other's company. Okay, that was using the I statement. So that was number 2. Number 3, consider where you are flexible in this issue and what are also your non-negotiables. And your non-negotiables should only be 1 or 2 things, and they probably should reflect around safety, security, respect, like your basic safe things. And then you should be very creative and having alternatives and being flexible so that when your partner hears about the fact, let's just say that you want to go back to school and it's going to cost like $60,000 or more. And your non-negotiable is that you're not staying in the career that you are right now. It's causing you too much stress, too much tension. You're not getting paid enough. You really don't care for this job. Or maybe you were already laid off because of this pandemic and now you want to shift to another career fully and you need to go back to school and it's going to cause some rift on the financial side. Then the non-negotiable is your education and that you're not staying in this career path that you just were, released from. But your negotiables and your flexibles should be maybe the schools that you research and that you could attend. It could also be even the actual degree or the actual career, because the career can probably come from multiple types of education, can lead you to the same path. So you can be more flexible on whether you're going to, to study, what you're going to study. You could probably be more flexible because you can get to the same path from various different channels. So just explore the and be flexible in those different channels. Okay, so that was 3, to consider where you're flexible and consider your non-negotiables. Your non-negotiables are going to be a lot less, maybe just 1 or 2 compared to where you're flexible. Number 4, say thank you. And you want, thank you for listening. And then you are going to now offer the same gift that your partner gave you, which is the gift of listening. So you're going to now zip it. And now you're going to hear your partner. Now, if your partner is listening to this, this is what I would like the partner to do. So if you just listen for the last 15, 20 minutes, or not even, maybe it was just like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and your wife or your husband or your partner just talk to you about all of these things. What I want you to do is to start with what made sense first, okay? Thank you. You could even start with a thank you for sharing your heart with me. What made sense to me is that you don't want to go back to that career, that you're tired and exhausted from that path, and that you are now moving on to something new. And then from here, you can add your thoughts and your ideas. So then you can just say, I am open for you, obviously, to keep growing and be happy in your career path. And then you can encourage them, but then you could also state your non-negotiables, and then you guys can come together to some sort of resolution. All right, so by prioritizing listening, understanding, and respect, you can come to a workable solution or agree to disagree. Okay, remember, long-term healthy relationships, all of them have unresolved issues. So not everything has to get resolved. Also remember that forgiveness is a must. If you're going to stay healthy, you've got to grant each other forgiveness for hurting each other's feelings. And forgiveness doesn't make something right. It just allows you to let go of the hurt and to move on, to give your relationship a fresh start. And as you continue on this path, you can not only use these relationship and conflict resolution skills in your personal relationship, you can use them in your professional life. At the end of the day, the best gift you can give yourself is the gift of love, forgiveness, growth, maturity. And if you need some support in this area, because a lot of people do, because especially if you were married or together for a long time, you've gotten already involved and entrenched in patterns that don't serve you anymore, and you're kind of just stuck there. So if you are stuck there, reach out to a professional, reach out to me. And just to summarize, we are in season 3 of Passion Unlimited podcast. We are in a relationship reboot series. Today's dialogue has been around conflict resolution skills. And I'm here to help you and support you to go from surviving to thriving in your life, love, and relationships. Subscribe, please. Subscribe to Passion Unlimited podcast through any of the podcast stations. And you can subscribe on YouTube under Fearless Love, one word. You want to follow me on social media, you can find me on Instagram under Gianni Adamo. You could also follow me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Passion Unlimited Podcast Group. And you can also check out my website. And I have a free 15-minute consultation for anyone who would like to learn and grow and continue to evolve in their relationship. Till next time, bye.